So now that I've covered all of the hype things about the anniversary, the GSSR, the Destiny Order Summon, and how many Sanctquartz we're going to be getting, I actually wanted to drop a video talking about all the things we're going to be getting that are not summon related in the anniversary, because you may have heard that this anniversary is a little bit mid, it's not the best, and that is true. It's not the most hype anniversary we've ever gotten, but there is still a lot of good we're going to be getting this anniversary. And I wanted to make sure that you were aware of some of the things we were going to be getting. So strap in, get comfortable. This might be a little bit of a longer one. I mean, there is quite a few things we're going to be getting. And as per usual, if you like these style of videos and you also like being informed on the goings on of both the NA and JP side of things, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for that daily FGO content. So let's start diving right into this, starting off with the first thing, and that is the anniversary login bonus, which does have a couple of nice things here and there. You're going to be getting like 30 million QP, you'll get a lore, you'll get one of the Bond Ember thingies, but the most important thing that a lot of people are going to care about is probably the 10 tickets, because that's effectively a multi-summon on whatever banner you want, and we're also going to be getting 10 teapots for Bond farming, if that is something that you care about, you're trying to get your Bond CEs, or if you're also trying to Bond farm because, well, Bond equals Sanctquartz equals more summons equals more dopamine means me likey happy. It is a 10-day login, so make sure you're logging in every single day, even if you don't intend to farm any of the dailies or the Bleached Earth missions, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. Make sure you're at least logging in so you can at least get those 10 Sanctquartz and maybe even a nice little cheeky lore. Now, I have full guides on both the Destiny Order Summon and the GSSR, but this is something that we're going to be getting for this anniversary. Basically, you select a character for each class, and you are guaranteed to get one of the characters you've chosen. Think of it as a larger GSSR, so the prospects of you getting the exact character you want is less, but since you did pick all of the characters, you can't really get shafted, quote-unquote, because my brother in Christ, you picked all of the characters. But I do also get the sentiment that if you are looking for supports and you don't get them, you get one of the DPSs. That can be a little unfortunate, but hey, maybe you put, you know, your Castoria, Kleyenskaya, Oberon as your extra 2, and you didn't get any of them, but you maybe did put Melusine as your Lancer and you end up getting her. That's still pretty good. You know, at least if you don't get the support you're wanting, because that's what a lot of people are going to be putting on there, you at least can walk away with a character you really like or that can still kind of help you out. GSSR this year is a little bit different because it's going to be split into male and female, and there are a lot of missing characters on this. For one, the male half of things I think got completely shafted on this one. There is 4 banners for the male side, and realistically the only one you would want to try to do is the Oberon one, and even that's a 1 in 5 chance, so choosing that as your GSSR does not give you good prospects at getting him, but hey, 20% chance is a 20% chance at the guy that can supercharge the damage you're doing on your account. More than likely, though, you're going to be going on one of the female banners, and I did break all of these down in a separate video if you do want to go check that out. But there are a lot of missing characters. A lot of people point out Draco, but what about people like my girl Jalter? Where is Jalter, man? I want my NP3 Jalter. I feel like I'm personally being called out on this one. Or even on the male side of things, where's Gilgamesh? Where are all these really popular characters? This, I definitely think, while it is still a free 5-star, quote-unquote, you do have to use paid Sanctquartz for this and the Destiny Order Summon, there are a lot of characters missing here, and how hard is it to make an additional GSSR? I don't know, it just feels really weird. Why are you making some of these characters harder to get by not putting them on the GSSR? No idea. Because again, some of them like Gilgamesh, I mean, they're good, but it's not like they're meta-definingly good. Or Jalter is strong, but it's not like she's the best character in the game. I don't know, a couple of L's on this one for the GSSR, but if you're going to be doing it, I have a full guide on that on the channel, uploaded it like last week or so. I did mention that there is going to be some type of farming that you're going to be able to do during the anniversary, and that is actually because all of your daily quests are going to be halved, and so are your Bleached Earth missions, which is really strong because the Bleached Earth missions are incredibly good because the drop rate is very strong, and you can get a pretty substantial amount of bond from doing these quests if that's something you're interested in. For me personally, I do the Las Vegas one every single day because it's functionally just a slightly better version than the daily Chaldea farming, you know, fighting against the doors. So if you're at the Bleached Earth area, you know, if you've unlocked that, I highly encourage you to take advantage of this. And also if you're trying to grail or level up some of your characters or craft essences, the great and super success rate is going to be raised by ×3, meaning this is a great time that if you're stocked up on a lot of EXP cards to try and 120 some of your servants, this is a great time to do it. I myself have been stockpiling a lot of these EXP cards so I could try to get Ace the Savior to 120, granted hoping that I pull enough copies to get the coins that I'll need. but even I myself, I am getting ready for this by stockpiling 5-star EXP cards over like the past couple of years, so that way I can hopefully avoid trying to have her stuck at level 114 for like a year and a half, and hopefully can get her done in one shot. So this is a really good time to start leveling up those, and also your craft essence. I have a video on what CE bombs are and how the most effective way to level up your CEs are. So if you have some CEs that are really good, that you have max limit broken, this is now the time to also start getting that done. Now, a major update, one thing that I think is very good that we're finally getting on the NA side of things, is returning event CEs into the DaVinci shop. Now, not all of these are crazy, but there are some ones that are quite notable, and I'm actually going to break all of these down. That way you can see maybe if you're sitting on like 20,000 mana prisms and you're like, well, I kind of want these for collection, which one should I be going after? Do some of these have maybe a niche corner case use? I'll be going over all of that right now. But this is also really good because this does get updated periodically, you know, not as fast as it should, to bring in some other craft essences that were very strong. Someone actually on stream the other day was asking how do they get the first day of filming, because, you know, it's one of the best CEs you could have for your buster farmers outside of just straight up Black Grail if they're compliant with it. And I was telling them, it's gonna be a fat minute before we get that, but it is coming. It'll be here eventually. You know, we're not gonna be getting it anytime soon on NA unless they want to expedite this, but it is at least a nice thing that they're bringing back. So starting off with the first one, we have Summertime Mistress. This one actually isn't half bad. It starts you off with 50% battery and gives you 20% crit damage, and it's an attack CE, meaning if it is something you want to invest in because you just think Camilla is super hot, and you would be right, this is one that is fine to level up. Although I wouldn't prioritize this one because even though it is pretty solid, you probably have better CEs to work with. But again, I understand. I use CEs that aren't optimal. I level up some of the ones that aren't the best just because it has a character I really like on it. And this is one of the ones that I might actually level up to 100 just because, come on, bro. Like, you gotta admit, Carmilla's looking pretty dang good on this one. And the effects aren't terrible. 20% free crit damage is good for any one of your characters that is a little crit oriented and wants a little bit more oomph behind their crits. Now, the one that everybody should be prioritizing is going to be Golden Sumo. This is a legendary CE because when it came out, everybody immediately acknowledged how good this was. It's a 2k attack CE, meaning it is worth leveling up for that alone, but also it starts with a 50% battery and gives you a free 15% attack buff, meaning this is good on anybody. Everybody loves more attack, so this is good for any one of your offensive servants. Free attack is free attack. If you can only get one of these CEs, this should be the one that you are prioritizing because it can help out any one of your team comps, because everybody likes to do more damage, whether it's Buster that just wants to really care about clearing with big raw numbers, or your quick characters that if you don't have a good NP refund or a good quick CE, at least you can beef up their attack a little bit more, so maybe they get overkill on their NP, which inadvertently in a way does help them actually get more refund. Same thing for your arts characters. If they're not hitting hard enough but they're looping fine, slap this on your Rider Mordred. The one thing that someone like that is missing is more damage, right? So this is just one that everybody should be looking at because it is incredibly strong and will just always be really good because it's a good attack CE, it has a very good 50% starting gauge effect, and 15% attack is 15% attack. Then we have Divine Princess of the Storm. This one is actually kind of interesting. I don't think you should overlook this one. If you're someone that enjoys doing solo quests or something along those lines, or you're doing some kind of setup where you're planning on one of your servants to go down, this isn't bad because whenever the character that has this CE goes down, they give the entire party 25% defense for 3 turns. Not bad if you're going into a solo. Maybe you put this on your Leonidas, he goes down, gives your main soloer extra defense, so maybe they're just that much more harder to take down, and maybe you live that extra turn or two. It's not something that I think everybody should be prioritizing, but it is something that you do want to keep an eye out on. It does give you 3k HP whenever you fully level it up, but I would recommend not using it for those purposes because if you're putting this on a servant you want to go down, you want them to have less HP. So it might actually be more optimal to not level up this CE if that's what you're going to be using it for. Then we have School of Chaldea. This one is pretty mid. I don't recommend going for this one. It gives you a 50% battery, which is nice, but increases healing received by 30%. You would probably be better almost saving the team cost that this 5-star CE is going to be imposing on your team by just running Dragon's Meridian or something. I mean, the healing rate received is probably never going to come up. I mean, it's kind of cool if you want to do big heal teams, but that's not really a thing in FGO, so I would really avoid this one like the plague. Your 5k mana prisms are probably best spent somewhere else. We have Decapitating Bunny 2016. This gives you Pierce Invincibility and a 10% quick performance buff while also being an attack CE. This is interesting, not for the fact that it's an attack CE or that it gives you quick, but just the fact that it's a Pierce Invul CE. If you're really down horrendous and you don't have anything but somehow are just swimming in mana prisms or something, this is not the worst one to pick up, but there are better Pierce Invincibility CEs out there. You know, you're probably going to get one from a future event. You could probably pull one from the gacha. I can see some people maybe going for it just for that reason, but I would tell you that unless you've grabbed things like Golden Sumo or the Nightingale or the Camilla CE, if you have already grabbed all of those, then maybe you could pick this one up, but I wouldn't prioritize this one because while Pierce Invincibility is really strong to just permanently have on one of your characters, it's not so strong that I think you should prioritize it because there are other CEs that do exactly what this one does, but are just better. For instance, there's the Altera one that gives you Pierce Invul and 50% start engage, which I would argue is a better use of your mana prisms if you're really down bad for a Pierce Invul CE. And then finally, we have Purely Bloom. This just gives you 5% NP damage every single turn, up to a max of 50%. That gives you 2,000 attack. Again, this one is kind of interesting. I wouldn't say it's a priority, but it is one of those ones that you could keep in the back of your head. You can kind of do some interesting stuff with it. For instance, there are some boss battles, like say the one that's currently for the Medusa Feed event, where the first couple of turns you're not able to do any damage because, you know, you get a 200% attack down. If you know you're going to be stalling and you're fine with kind of building up over time, this can be an interesting pick. Not something that I think you need to be hard prioritizing on, but it is something that, you know, if you like doing more interesting, more weird team comps, this could be one that could see some usage in your Chaldea. Kind of niche, but does open up some fun team comps if that's the kind of thing you're into. So I won't fully write it off. And again, it is an attack CE. It's not great. You could just use something like Heaven's Feel or Black Grail and get way more power immediately. But again, you know, if you want to have a little bit of fun, you kind of like testing some things out, it could be something interesting that you could try out for some kind of battle. And then the last one, I almost forgot about this one, Moonlight Festival gives you 20% star gen and 20% crit damage. If you're really that down bad for crit damage, just pick the Carmilla one. Because the 20% crit star generation, look, if you're a crit star genning servant, you're probably already genning enough stars as it is. You know, you're probably a quick character, you probably have your own crit star generation buff already, or you gen stars every single turn. So kind of an irrelevant thing to have on a CE. This is extremely old. This is from the very first event in FGO, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, it's kind of bad, but you would expect it to be bad. It's a really, really old CE. But if you're a collector, then I guess you could pick up a copy of this and call it a day. But speaking of the Da Vinci shop, this is not the only new thing that she's going to be getting. There's actually going to be an update to the monthly shop where there are going to be 3 new items that you can pick up every single month alongside your tickets. And that's going to be an attack and a HP golden faux pas. So if you're trying to, you know, 2k your characters a bit quicker, this can kind of help you slowly progress that to move from a snail's pace to a turtle's pace. And it's also going to give you faux pas, which are things that you use to increase the actual attack cards of your characters if you're really trying to make sure they're fully maxed out. It's not a big deal for a lot of players, but for people like me that like to kind of pick up everything and are trying their best to max out all the characters that they like and they have all these extra mana prisms, this isn't a bad update. And hey, after a lotto comes and you start having more mana prisms in your account, these are also just nice to pick up every single month. It's just a neat little thing that they're throwing into the Da Vinci shop. Now, I could have sworn we already had this on NA. I thought they gave this to us earlier, but in case they don't, this was the year where we did get the mana prisms for every summon you do. So now, not only are you building up your pity and everything as you're summoning on banners, but you're also getting mana prisms back for each summon you do. Again, I could have sworn we already had this. Somebody in the comments can correct me on this one, but if we don't, this is a very nice update because it does help you kind of generate extra mana prisms outside of like doing your daily content grind stuff. So a nice little buff. Just know that tickets do not give you any mana prisms for whatever reason. I don't know why that was the line in the sand that they drew where it's like, well, the players can't be getting mana prisms for ticket summons. I mean, that would be absolute anarchy. I have no idea why that was the line in the sand for them. Now, I brought up in yesterday's video about all the Sanquits we're going to be getting from clearing the story and everything. There actually is going to be a Lost Belt 7 support clear campaign alongside this, where all of the main story is going to be cut in half, so it's a lot easier to get through. You know, making sure that you have to burn as much stamina, but they're also going to be giving you some more Spirit Vein Stones, or blue cubes, which effectively give you the effect of a 3 command spell revival, where all of your characters come back to life, and all of their NP gauges are charged to the max. So if you're really struggling to get through some of these quests, maybe the Batman is giving you some some trouble. Maybe, I mean, I know the Tetskali Polka fight at the end is kind of a dead end if you don't finish it anyway, but, you know, if there's any particular fight that you're struggling with, you know, maybe it's one of the force support ones where you have to use Nitocris or something and you're just not as good at the game yet, you don't really know how to manage your resources, this can just be free revives getting through there. So you're going to be getting 3 alongside the trade limit of getting an additional 10. So that is like 13 revives that you have to assist you in clearing Lost Belt 7, which does mean more Saint Quartz, which means more summons, and I've already done that spiel earlier. The next update probably doesn't matter for a lot of people except for me and some of the other longtime players exactly, but the storage is actually going to be increased for like your second archive and your, you know, regular storage and stuff, which is very nice. If you're sitting on a lot of memorable CEs like I am and you don't like having them in your main box because they just take up a lot of space, it's just nice you can keep dumping things over there so you don't have to fully get rid of the CEs, but you can still retain your boxes. So that is nice if you're like me and you're always running out of space. You have that additional storage being expanded for this anniversary. We also have a really good run of servant buffs this year. There are a lot of popular characters that are going to be going from absolutely unusable to now being absolute gods in the game. And there's also quite a few buffs that kinda don't really do anything, but let's just kind of break these down. Salter is getting a buff to her mana burst that effectively turns her into a looping machine. Anytime she hits an enemy with her buster card, she refunds 10% battery. And with her NP being an AoE buster card, if she hits all 3 enemies with her NP, she refunds 30% battery, which yes, does mean you can get in situations where you'll see your Saber Alter refunding better than some arts and quick characters, refunding like 70% of her battery. So if you are one of those people that wanted to do farming with Salter and was really frustrated that she only had a 20% battery, so she was essentially gate kept out of the buster meta, you're gonna really enjoy this buff because it makes her quite sick, nasty, and goated with the sauce. Then we have one for Jaguar Man, which effectively just gives themselves their Forest Battlefield buff, which turns on their first skill, which is reliant on the Forest Battlefield. This doesn't make Jaguar Man a crazy god of the game or anything, but this does at least let her function as a character, giving her immediate stars and allowing her to access her crit damage buffs on that first skill. So if you are a Taiga or Jaguar Man enjoyer, you can at least know that now she functions as a unit. She can at least do her job in smacking the enemy for some big crits, and that's just always nice to see. Then we have Bradamante's buff. Bradamante is a character that is meme worthy in how bad she's not able to loop. In fact, when she initially came out, I took her to try to loop her own event and she couldn't even get close. And I'm like, dang, this is really sad. A character gets dropped with their own event and can't even perform very well. Well, they've decided to buff some things for her. They've given her a 30% battery that is still targetable, a 30% power mod against Earth attribute enemies, and a much needed 30% NP gain buff. This overnight turns Bradamante from a quick looper that couldn't really do much of anything to now somebody that you'll see being compliant with Black Grail farming. This is an insane buff for Bradamante, and if you've been holding out and coping for this character, then you, like myself, are going to be greatly rewarded by the fact that she is now not only a good quick looper, but a Black Grail one at that. Coming alongside her is going to be William Tell, who is functionally just getting a very long-winded buff that just allows him to kind of get his marking thing going. Instead of relying on enemies to have the evasion and all that stuff, it kind of just lets you turn this buff on more frequently. You know, you can do more damage. It's just trying to make this more gimmicky character work a bit better. Maybe they realize that instead of doing this gimmicky thing with William Tell, people would just use somebody like Robin Hood who could just slap poison on anybody and still do some respectable damage, or somebody like Paris who was able to remove enemy buffs, and if they removed buffs from people, they did bonus damage. So they're trying to push William Tell a little bit. This is a really strong buff for him if you do use him, but I do imagine a lot of people like myself probably aren't going to care too much about this one because I aren't really cracking out William Tell all that often, but it does make him a bit better. Then we tailor over to another insane Buster buff. This is definitely the anniversary of Buster because Raiko is going to be getting a buff where they finally fix her battery by actually giving her one that's 30%, and they fix her Buster buff. She had a one-turn 30% Buster buff, which is just absolutely abysmal. Now she's got a 30% Buster buff, which can be stacked with Koyainskaya skills to make it a 60%, and with the slew of power mods that she has on her third skill, she actually does become quite the effective Buster looper, especially because she is one of the few characters that is rocking a strong Sky attribute power mod, and as a Berserker, you can effectively bring her to fight anybody. So Raiko actually gets quite a a bit better during this anniversary. Alongside her will be Hans, who I'm not going to say that this is a game-breaking buff for him, but if you are more on the low end of things, this is just a solid buff overall, allowing him to give 50% crit damage to the entire party, and then depending on your alignment, you actually will get a different series of buffs. If you're good alignment, you get 50% star gen, which isn't super good. If you're balanced, you get 20% NP gain rate, which is pretty solid. Evil aligned people get 20% NP damage, and if you do not have good, balanced, or evil, then you get an additional 20% crit damage. So again, not the craziest thing for Hans. It's not like, oh, now he's competing with the likes of Merlin and Scotty and Castor. Like, no, it's nothing like that. But it's just, if you're doing low-end setups, this guy is going to be even better, which I love to see. It makes the new player experience that much easier, that if you don't have one of these crazy, uber broken supports, then Hans just becomes that much of a better option for you and makes your life just that much easier when going through content. But as if Buster wasn't eating enough, they also said, well, we, gave Salter the hookup and we gave Raiko the hookup. What if we also did that to Karna? Again, Arjuna is just left in the shadows, getting absolutely nothing, but I'm all here for it because they made my boy Karna insanely good. So they gave him a 30% battery, which they fixed it from 25% because the 25% battery meant you would always be 5% shy from being able to do Buster looping with this guy, which was a shame because not only does he just do a lot of really strong damage natively, but he's got a strong divine power mod on him as well, so it was just really sad that you couldn't make use of it. That's no longer a problem. Karna's now an absolute god at dunking on enemies. But then they also said, screw it, let's give him 50% crit damage, 100% star gen, and you know what, 40 stars, let's just drop that as well. So now he can not only just drop stars like a god, he can crit like a god, and he almost guarantees that whenever you pop this skill that everybody's doing crits for the turn, which just seems really unnecessary, but you know what, with how OP Karna is supposed to be, I'm glad they gave him a buff that really reflects that power. And alongside him, we're also getting a buff for Summer Okita, which, like Bradamante, takes her from being this okay quick looper, at least more okay in Okita's case, and they turn her into a Black Grail looping god. With a 30% battery and 30% NP gain, who would have thought that if you just give these quick characters a little something, they can go from being okay to being absolute gods at the game, which I will greatly appreciate because I love me some Okita action, so being able to use her as a quick looper is always going to put a smile on my face. Now we kind of start moving into some of the more mid buff though. Anastasia got a buff that you can't exactly say is bad, but it's not exactly what people were hoping for. When this came out, people wanted her to be able to loop a little bit easier, but they tried to more tailor her to still being a CQ AoE art character because she now stuns all the enemies, 60% chance for one turn, and reduces their art's resistance by 30% for 3 turns while getting a cooldown bonus on her skill, making it now a 6-turn cooldown, which this is not bad. This is fine if you're going into boss fights and stuff, but if you were wanting Anastasia to be a god looper at the game, this is not quite going to be it. I mean, technically you could say, well, you could pop this on wave 3 so she gets bonus damage if you're using her as a looper, but you have so many better options out there that kind of seems like hope on that front. But again, if you're bringing her to boss fights, this is still not bad because it means that that boss is going to be more susceptible to her art's attacks, meaning she's going to be doing more damage, and it technically buys you a turn by stunning all of your enemies. So that's kind of nice, I suppose. Summer Kiyohime also gets a buff, and it's fine, I guess. It's a 20% battery, and now anytime she attacks, she puts burn on enemies while also just natively hitting them with a 5-turn burn. You can do some fun things with this, I guess, if you want to use her with Honey Lake that gives you a burn power mod, but realistically, it doesn't really change the metric or the meter on Summer Kiyohime. She's not really getting any much better with this skill. It's nice if you're a Summer Kiyohime enjoyer, but it's not like she's really shifting anywhere on the meta list. I mean, she's still not a very good servant, but if you want to use her, she's marginally better. One that actually does kind of change things is Abigail Summers, because now instead of fully being reliant on just doing debuffs exclusively, they did give her a 30% Buster buff for 3 turns, so technically she becomes an okay Buster AoE character if you want to use her, with her now having a pretty strong buff that can be stacked with Koya and Skye because they made the cooldown 6 turns. It is kind of a consideration. If you do have Summer Pancakes, she can be a somewhat decent option, especially when you go into like the last turn, you can hit him with a massive 50% defense down. It does make her not the worst Buster AoE character. This is more just like a tuning job on Summer Abigail to make sure that, like, okay, we'll make sure that this character is no longer the worst character in the game type of thing. So that's kind of nice for her, I suppose. Mandricardo also gets his second skill fixed up a little bit. Instead of it being for one measly attack, now you actually get to do a full turn of damage because the 100% crit damage and the 50% attack buff are no longer relegated to just one big strike. Now you can do a big old chain with Mandricardo over here before he actually sacrifices himself. Kind of a nice thing if you want to use your best friend in some boss fights and want to see him go out on a really strong turn instead of just one random attack followed by two other rather unimpressive attacks. So very good stuff from Mandricardo here. And then finally, we have the one that made me the most upset when it dropped, Summer Artoria, the Archer one. The one thing that she does not struggle with is looping her NP. She would really like to get more damage, so that way she can loop her NP and actually start doing bigger and bigger bursts of damage. So they thought we were going to give her a 30% battery and evasion pierce for 3 turns, which, again, not the worst thing. You can't really say getting a battery and pierce evasion is bad, but it's not exactly what I thought she needed when I thought of Archer Artoria. This is not the buff that really came to mind. It does mean she now has some applications and multi-core setups. If you have a particularly strong Summer Artoria, now she can be a single target chunker for you because she has her own battery plus the double Castoria battery. She can get up to 90% herself, which means all you gotta do is unlock her a pen skill, or she has some kind of starting charge CE and she'll be all good from there. But even then, if she's only at NP1, she's not really going to be chunking any very strong enemies now, is she? So kind of wish they gave her something more than that, but I can't in good faith say that it's a bad buff. It's just kind of like a good buff that she didn't need, I suppose, if you want to say it that way. Gawaine's is actually pretty nice. It synergizes really well with his Sunlight Battlefield buff, so you proc the Sunlight Battlefield with his skills and you fire his NP, and whenever he's on Sunlight Battlefield, he'll start stacking the crit damage of his Buster cards by 50%, and he'll also give his Buster cards star weight while on Sunlight Battlefield. So even though he's not in a position to do the Koyenskaya looping because his battery's a little too small, it does set him up in a fact that if you do get to a position where he gets a 30% battery buff in the future, he'll kind of just become a mini version of Richard that just came out earlier this year, and that's kind of nice for my boy Gawaine. Love seeing him get a little bit of love. At least it synergizes with his kit rather well. Finally, we start moving into some of the heavy guns for the anniversary. You know, we're moving into the actual gacha that we're getting. The main character that's coming out this year is going to be Ace the Savior, Tonalico, Beach Queen Morgan, whatever you want to call her. I do a video coming out on her in like a week or so from now, I want to say. I try to drop these things about the day of or the day when these characters actually drop, but the long and short of it is this character is insanely good. They can function as a DPS and as a pseudo support for your party, which makes her extremely valuable. And it's another Saberface, so Saberface enjoyers get something out of this. Or if you're like me and you just love Morgan to bits, then this banner is absolutely something you should be summoning on. Now, if you're going to ask me, is this character must needed for every single account? No, she's not a Castoria, she's not a Koyenskaya, she's not even an Oberon, right? Those are the must summon characters because this game lives and dies by its supports, and technically she's not a fully fledged support. She can work without people like Koyenskaya and Oberon, but really likes to be paired alongside them. So a high priority character, one of the best characters we get this year, but a must summon, you don't have to fully prioritize her. If you want to go for Summer Castoria or even Summer Melusine, you can do that in good conscience, knowing that this character is not going to make or break your account, but she certainly will make it a lot better. Alongside her is going to be a gacha with a revolving door of characters that realistically, unless you like any of these people, you don't have to summon for them. I mean, the Trunk Sisters are okay, Tomalancers alright, Constantine is pretty good, but you don't really want to play with him. It's a defensive style of gameplay that not a lot of people are very privy to, so if you don't enjoy that, don't summon. Space Ishtar, there are a lot of better options for each of the different card types you can become. While she is still really valuable, unless you're a huge Rin fan, I would advise avoiding her like the plague. Tyra is actually a very interesting option because she will get a buff that makes her even better than she already is right now. If you're going to be tempted by anyone, Tyra I could definitely understand going for. Let's not kid ourselves with some Super Bunyan because nobody's going to be summoning on that banner. And then finally there's Van Gogh as the last 5-star. She immediately turns all of your existence outside of the domain characters, pretty much all of your foreigners, into absolute gods at the game. So if you like a lot of foreigners or you know you're going to be summoning for a character that has existence outside of the domain, Van Gogh kind of becomes a must summon for those team setups because she's just kind of too good to not run in those team comps. Then I have a couple of other just mini things that we're going to be getting. There's an Ace trial quest, so if you want to go, you know, use Ace for like this simple mission real quick, test her out real quick, you get a ticket out of that. That's kind of nice. Sure, it's whatever. Da Vinci Shop will be having some exclusive items for the anniversary. She always does. Notable things are 10 tickets, an attack and HP faux pas, a couple of, you know, EXP cards here and there, a couple of extra HP and attack regular faux pas. Just nice things to pick up for any of the new characters you get. Rare prisms are also going to be updated over here. Notable things I would say are the lures and the HP and attack foes, maybe the bond candles if you're really in need of those. And then in the Rare Prism shop, we are finally getting the returning CEs. You know, all of the old Da Vinci shop CEs that are no longer available, they are all coming back out. And how it works is you unlock them with rare prisms and then you purchase them with regular mana prisms. So kind of like the other event returning CEs, if you want to get, say, Chaldea Lunchtime or Mona Lisa or one of these other things, prioritize getting these done. You are going to be getting a rare prism from the login, so you can at least guarantee unlock one of these. I would prioritize being selfish and getting Chaldea Lunchtime and Mona Lisa first. That's 10% bond and QP respectively. I know that you want to put the Bella Lisa and Chaldea Tea Time on your supports, but again, keep in mind for yourself, that's only giving you 5%. Make sure you're taking care of your own Chaldea before you worry about your friends. Detective Foe is also a really good one to pick up. That's 5% bond and QP. Very good for just general teams if you're going to be doing farming. Grand Cavello is also pretty good. And then outside of that, I would maybe say Dinner Time is also pretty good. You know, Master EXP and Extra Bond if you're trying to eke out extra little bits of bond here and there. But then a lot of the other ones like Idolmaker, Be Graceful, Take Romance, Personal Training, Personal Lesson, Personal Coaching, Beyond the Rain Cloud, Free Seating. A lot of these are just like more okay craft essences, more as collector items. If you want to go back and get these, those are fine, but I would prioritize the ones that I mentioned before because they are going to make your life a lot easier when it comes to farming both QP and for farming bond, because again, more bond, blah, 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 you know, more saying quartz, all that stuff. And then finally, we're getting a very nice bonus that your starting members, whoever you put at the front 3 slots in your party, they will be getting a 20% bond bonus for themselves. So make sure that you are putting characters you want to prioritize getting bonded up in your front line. Don't worry if you have a support in your front line, they are giving 4% to everybody, so they're not just kind of wasting space there. You could do some interesting stuff where for your double, you know, supports with the plug suit, maybe you try to finagle some things where you have the support you want a plug suit in the back. It kind of works more for 90++ quests where you could put like the friend Castoria in the back, that way your front 3 members are kind of hogging all of the bond for that one. But it's just a nice update that makes bond farming just that much easier, getting to those bond CEs, which is going to be very important for the Grand Trials. But that is pretty much everything we're going to be getting for the 8th anniversary. I know this was a longer video, but there was quite a bit to go over. Wanted to make sure that we accurately went over things. The most major thing for me is returning old CEs and returning Da Vinci shop CEs, because there are a lot of players that have missed out on some of these CEs and they're very, very strong. So even if you can't pick them up now, you'll eventually come into enough mana prisms that you could pick them up in the future, and we'll start to get things like Ox King and First Day of Filming eventually in the future. These really strong event CEs that are quite powerful, or even the Drinking Jalter CE. You know, that one's still pretty strong to this day, and it's also just got a banger art. So let me know in the comment section down below what you're most looking forward to with this anniversary. I am gonna go rest my throat, so with all that being said, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, peep the links down in the description down below. We got the Patreon where there's exclusive videos over there, and you get to vote on content that comes out over here on the channel, usually on Fridays, but with FGO getting a little bit more busy as we're ramping up to anniversary, that might be put on pause for a week or two here. You might have also noticed I'm getting back in the habit of trying to stream regularly. I think Thursday, the day that this video is coming out, I don't think I'll be streaming. I think I have a hangout with the boys that I have to go attend, but Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is always going to be FGO. Tuesday, Thursday is going to be other games, and I'm really looking forward to that. So come out to those if you want to see me play FGO, or if you want to see me explore other games. I mean, I kind of showed a little bit of my Yu-Gi-Oh dominance on Tuesday, so excited to do more of that as the weeks go by. And there's also the Discord link down in the description down below. So if you want to talk to other people in the FGO community, Dokkan, I mean, Bleach Brave Souls, I guess, is there, and nobody really posts in it. But hey, once in a blue moon, you could talk to somebody about that. We got a chat for Nikkei, you know, HoloLive, not HoloLive, but Hoyoverse stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's people you could talk to about HoloLive stuff, but Hoyoverse stuff like Honkai Star Rail or things like Wuthering Waves that are kind of not the same company, but run in a very similar way. You know, like I guess if you want to talk about Genshin in there, there's probably like 1 or 2 people you could talk to about it in there. But I think that's it for me. I'm going to stop yapping, go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye.